Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series on clinical SAS programming. In this video, we will see how to understand the concept of RELREC. So, as per SDTM standard, RELREC dataset is used to show the relationship between records present in two different datasets. So, let's say we have a clinical trial in which there is a subject who has a number of 1001. And let's say this subject has experienced pneumonia and from 5th Jan 2010 to 10th Jan 2010. Let's say that this pneumonia is treated with azithromycin and Benadryl. So azithromycin is being given from 5th Jan 2010 to 9th Jan 2010 and Benadryl is given from 5th Jan 2010 to 10th Jan 2010. So this first part of the information is related to adverse event. So this information gets mapped to our AE dataset. So similarly, so as these are the medications given to the subject, so this gets mapped to our concomitant medications. So this first portion has to be reported in AE dataset, and this second component, which is the treatment for pneumonia, this has to be reported in CM dataset. But we know that the treatments azithromycin and the Benadryl syrup given from on a specific dates are related to the treatment of pneumonia. So we need to show this relationship using RELREC dataset. So let's say that this adverse event, which is pneumonia, is being collected on a record with the line number identified in the database as, let's say, 21. So, and let's say these concomitant medications are being entered on lines of like 13 and 14 in the concomitant medications raw data related form. So, the adverse event which is reported on line number 21 in the adverse events form is linked to the records 13 and 14 of the concomitant medications form. So let's say this information is stored in a variable called AE SPID in SDTM dataset, and this line numbers 13 and 14 is stored in a variable called CM SPID in concomitant medications. So now we know that the record which has a AESPAD of 21 is related to the records 13 and 14 with the values in CMSPID variable. So we need to show this relationship in our RELREC dataset. So let us try to build the RELREC dataset for these. So we have subject 1001. So we have information in AE dataset and with ID variable of AESPID. So and the value in it is 21. So let us also try to build the records corresponding to CM. So CM, so with a CM SPID of 13 and also CM SPID of 14. So these three records are related. So what we do is we generally create a identifier which is like AECM. AE stands for adverse event, CM is for concomitant medications. So and we give a unique value which is common on these three records to identify that these three records are related. So we give the common value in rel ID variable. So we will now see how to use RELREC dataset to identify the treatments used for pneumonia. So it's basically a three-step process. The first step is to identify the rel ID associated with this AESPAD of 21. So and the next step is to identify the CMSPIDs with that rel ID. And then the third step is to identify the treatments associated with this CMSPID values in CM dataset. So the first step is to fetch the rel ID associated with this AESPID 21. So we first need to subset the records where R domain is equal to AE, and we know that the identifier variable is AESPID. So we need to filter for the records where R domain is equal to AE and ID var is equal to AESPID. So we know that the value 21 present in ID variable is nothing but the AESPID value. So what we can do is, in the first step, we can just rename this ID var value to AESPID. So we can now merge this AE dataset and this subsetted RELREC dataset with USUBJID and AESPID. So we will now get the associated rel ID, which is AECM1 in this case. So we now got the rel ID associated with AESP 1. So in the next step, what we need to do is we need to fetch the CMSP IDs associated with this rel ID of AECM1. For that, what we need to do is we need to subset the records where R domain is equal to CM and ID var is equal to CMSPID. So we'll get these two records in that subsetted data set. And then in this second subset, we know that the ID var value variable has the values of CMSPID. So in this second subset, we can rename the ID var val as CMSPID. And then we can merge the processed AE dataset, which already has this rel ID of AECM1, with our second subset RELREC dataset, which has the records corresponding to CM and CMSPID identifier variable. So we can then merge these two datasets at subject and CMSPID level, subject and rel ID level. So USUBJID and rel ID can be used to merge these two datasets. So in that case, what would happen is we would get 1001 AESPID of 21, rel ID is AECM1. So we have renamed ID var as CMSPID. So it will become a one-to-many merge. So we'll get this CMSPID of 13. And then on the second record for the same SPID of 21, same, and we have CMSPID of 14 as well. So in the third step, what we can do is merge our CM dataset to this dataset at subject and CMSPID level. So this is USUBJID and then CMSPID. So when we do this merge, this information is stored in a variable called CMTRT. The azithromycin and Benadryl will be present in a variable called CMTRT. So when we do this merge at USUBJD and CMSPID level, we will be able to fetch the CMTRT values. So the associated values can be fetched. So and the second one for CMSPID of 14, it was Benadryl. So we will be able to report the treatments used for pneumonia. So using RELREC in a single dataset. So the three-step process is fetch the associated rel ID for each AESPID and then fetch the associated CMSPIDs associated with that rel ID and then fetch the associated treatments associated with CMSPID by merging it to the CM dataset. So this is how we can create RELREC and reuse RELREC in our day-to-day programming activities. Thank you for watching and keep learning.